And so I had like a Superman complex going into college, right? When I started my frat, that I was president of the freshman class, and my big brother was the president of this and that. And I'm like, okay, this is success. I'm just gonna keep on doing this. It's nice and linear, and I'm gonna just win at everything because this is how I do. I might stumble a bit, but I learn it. Okay. So one day I'm doing deadlifts in the gym, and I pull up, to kind of lock out that last rep, and in my back.
Hello and welcome to another episode on the TradFi podcast.
My name is Mike Benzaken, and I am from New York, born and raised the New York City metro area. Right now, I'm at the intersection of managing a private foundation. I founded a private foundation, as well as building a VC group, but focused on emergent tech for the most part. And it has various different fun assets in there, like the Warrior Cast and different applications and stuff like that. In a very concise way, I will explain my philosophy. So I would say my philosophy on life is that everyone has to realize that it's by intent you identify your purpose. And your purpose is like an apex, if you will. It's a combination of transcendental values that you can never reach, right? Because you always want to be striving forward. That's how we're biologically built. That's how we've evolved, to always move forward towards chaos and the unknown, away from the fire. So my philosophy on life is to lean into discomfort and have one foot planted in order and one foot planted in chaos. So when I stumble forward, because you will always stumble forward in life, if you're not stumbling, you're not pushing, right? That I stumble forward. And that's my philosophy. As long as it's towards something that's transcendental, that's built on a value structure that I believe in wholly, but it's by intent, because you're not built with it. You're not built with it. You have to develop it. So there's my philosophy. One fun thing that's concise. When I was 13 years old, I went to Guatemala, okay, and I lived there with a family. And then when I went to Tikal, it's the largest Mayan architectural site in the world, right? So they had all these beautiful mystic stories about what happened there, right? And then some mysteries. I accidentally must have had some bad salad and drank water. Something happened, and essentially I got poisoned. So I purged that night, but when I woke up, I experienced something that some people call ego death, other people call ego death something else. But the whole area was glowing, like all the colors vibrant, everything was breathing. And then I climbed, you can't do it anymore, the largest Mayan architecture in the largest architectural site in the world. It was like there's roots, and then there's ladders, and then you're like, and then someone fell off it, so they stopped that, but I didn't fall off it, so that was good. And wow, did that connect me? And it made me lose a sense of like shame generally. That drove me forward and made me like able to do things that other people would shy away from normally. That was the moment when I was 13. Yeah.
Oh wow. And it hasn't gone back since then. Like since then you've been going for like, I'm shameless, I believe in this, I'm going for it.
Honestly, I think I lack it. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but someone asked me, what's the most embarrassing thing? And I was thinking I'm like, I really can't answer that, because it definitely tons of embarrassing things have happened. I just don't realize when they do, quite frankly.
No matter how dark the night is, the sun always rises. No matter how hard life gets, keep moving forward. You never know what amazing things are waiting just around the corner. No story is too rough, and no journey is too tough. Join us on Stretch Street to be inspired by the stories of people who have been through it all and come out stronger. Stretch Street Podcast. Stretching without snapping.
Nice to No? Okay, welcome guys to another episode on Stretch Street Podcast. This is your host, the energetic EJ, and I have with me today Mike Benz here, all the way from the US. And today he's going to be sharing a bit of his story. Of course, you already know what we do on Stretch Street. We document Stretch story. And I'm fascinated by Mike's journey so far, especially for what he's currently working on as the founder of a private foundation. We're not going to lean into that too much, but we're going to talk about it because I feel like for the phase or for the period or for the season that he is in it on his journey, that is like in the forefront because this is something that he believes in so much. This is something that he's fighting for, and it's just fascinating. I was going through their website earlier today, and I was just, I've been going through it for a while, trying to read a handbook that was on the website. And I saw some really, really profound statements, right? That caught my attention. Like, these are such strong words to use. And I saw some repetition as well, in what you kept saying. You kept reiterating the reason that you created Citizens Warrior, right? And I'm just fascinated. Not that I have, a lot of idea around blockchain technology and the likes and cryptocurrencies and things like that. I think I'm such a slow adapter when it comes to that. I'm warming my way there, but I mean, I'm not ashamed to say I'm still behind at the back of the class, right? But it is fascinating what Mike is trying to do with his foundation. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do that, let us get to know who Mike is. And as a person, as a business person, as a venture capitalist, as an entrepreneur over the years, what is one incident, one experience that really stretched you, that you felt, man, this is the end. How am I going to survive this? But then you found a way to survive it. Tell us that story, and then how were you able to navigate those seasons?
Yeah, and I'd love to. So I had a very fortunate upbringing. I had a 2-parent household, and they sent me to college. I didn't have to bear that cost. So those are the 2 greatest things that my parents had ever given me, right? And so going into college, I always had sort of linear success. I was very industrious, conscientious. I had low, what's called sensitivity to negative emotion. So I was extroverted. I was always putting myself out there, very studious, though, very kind of bordering on wanting the perfect, it's either perfect or it's no, right? It's either perfection, which is like the enemy of output, of production, right? Anyway, so these are things you learn downstream. So I hit the gym hard. Everything I did was hard. It had to be perfect. It had to be hard. It had to be scheduled. And so I had like a Superman complex going into college, right? When I started my frat, that I was president of the freshman class. And my big brother was the president of this and that. And I'm like, okay, this is success. I'm just going to keep on doing this. It's nice and linear, and I'm going to just win at everything because this is how I do. I might stumble a bit, but I learn it. Okay. So one day I'm doing deadlifts in the gym, and I pull up, to kind of lock out that last rep, and in my back. And I didn't think much of it. I even went for a second rep, I think, something ridiculous. Anyway, long story short, for about a week to 2 weeks afterwards, my frat brothers at the time, this is freshman year in college, they would carry me to the gym, literally carry me like this, so that I would still make it to the gym and to class and so on and so forth. And then I had to leave the semester. So my idea was 3.5 years, get the heck out of college, get that stupid piece of paper, and let's start winning in this world, right? Let's start doing something that's meaningful, right? As opposed to just hanging out and drinking on campus, which gets old after a few weeks. And so I essentially became I'm not going to say handicapped because that's chronic, but I developed diseases that are chronic as a result of that, or it was at the catalyst for something that was already genetically in me. A probabilistic outcome would be the genetics. It sparked that because I already had the marker for it. And then my whole spine became just, useless garbage. So I spent 3 months to 5 months with high dose opioids just dripping into my bloodstream. And people saying you're gonna have a hard time doing this, you're not gonna be able to do that again, you're not gonna be able to do that again. So then eventually, I spent some time in the hospital. I get out. I'll make this quick. And what I do is I don't go back to school immediately, because now I used to be this big guy, and now I was like this just kind of tiny little guy like wobbling around, like, I couldn't go downstairs easily, and so I'm like, crap. So I spent 3 months getting every certification I could in corrective exercise and personal training. 3 months, and then became a personal trader, became a pro trader, became a master trader, mentor master trader, blah 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 blah. Climbed all to my way up, and in the process of educating and then excelling, I fixed my back. So by the time I came back to school, which was 1.5 years later, which that stunk, because my class was always a year and a half in front, and I was the old guy, but whatever, we got around that. Yeah, so I realized my mortality, right? I realized my fragility. I realized that this is all a temporal experience, and that success is not linear, and that we're going to have setbacks, and that the only way to really contend with a setback productively is to lean into it and to own it as an opportunity. So I didn't realize that like immediately, because I spent months just with this drip, like, oh, I can just have this forever, and then realize like, oh my God, my life is disappearing in front of me, right? Snapped out, boom, and then they call it shedding. It's like, going through the descending into hell, and the fires burning off your dead wood. If you do it voluntarily, then you can contend with that. If you're thrown in involuntarily, right, by fiat, then it burns you up, because you're unwilling to let go of whatever that sense of just, I'm gonna get everything, right? And then you come out different in kind. And that was like my first major event that got me based in reality, more empathetic, more compassionate, and ultimately what drew me, I think, to what I ended up doing professionally, and even to where I am now, quite frankly. It's just
exactly. Yeah, I was going to ask that. What did that experience, or how did that experience affect, what you're doing now? Like, how did it play into what you decided to do eventually?
Well, so eventually I was very egocentric, right? And until I was 13, it was about, when every kid is egocentric, you have to be. Feed me, clothe me, feed me, shelter me. That's how we are, right? And as children, and then hopefully we grow out of it. Maybe our generation, but okay, different generations grow out at different rates, hopefully, right? But no, for me, it was a matter of consciousness, that life was not a matter of one could control all the facets, and therefore, if their outcome is poor, then it is on them that their outcome is poor. There are times, and you should always, whenever there's a poor outcome, say, how did I contribute? That should be the first response. This is wisdom. But the second is, what's the external loci of control? And then you have to forgive yourself, right? Because especially if, let's say you have a tyrannical government and they put you in a situation, okay, maybe you didn't speak up when you had the chance along with everyone else when everyone was afraid, but okay, so that's come and gone, you've learned, and now it's time to step up and have that consciousness. So I have that consciousness now that allows me to be more empathetic, not like pathologically compassionate, because that is very bad, actually, that leads to terrible things, but rational and reasonably empathetic, and act on behalf of those who were, let's say, taken advantage of by a malevolent few, who at the end of the day call the shots, which is, this is not a conspiracy. Governance is unilateral and it's fiat, right? And that's why I'm in the blockchain space and believe in the blockchain ethos, which is decentralization, which is democratization, which is free markets in the sky, if you will. Yeah. So
okay, so let me take you back just a little bit before we go into this, topic. Is what you said.
Don't worry about that.
You said no, we're gonna go there. But you said something. You said you learned from that experience to be more empathetic, right? Yes. But not pathetically compassionate. What is the difference between those? Pathologically, okay. Pathologically compassionate. What's the difference between empathetic and pathologically compassionate? Please, I want to learn.
So one is grounded in reason. Okay, so I can evaluate an outcome and say, yeah, this person may have contributed X percentile to this outcome, and then the rest was based on external circumstances beyond their control. And so is it reasonable for one to assume that the average person, without all the resources, let's say, without my bias coming in, because I had the 2-parent household and they had enough to put me through college, right? Just how many people have that, right? And I'm brought up in freaking New York, in North America. It's like we're already in the 1%, even if we're poor, right? In the global 1%. So, so it allows me to kind of extract out that bias and then evaluate. And then I'm like, okay, like this person here. So it's not just regardless of their circumstance, regardless of the conditions, regardless of anything, I'm going to throw everything I can, regardless of the outcome, to help them, even if they're undeserving of the help. Okay. Because some people do bad things and they add up in bad situations. And so we have to be able to differentiate, and we've forgotten how to do this because we've adopted a postmodern sort of moral relativistic perspective on the world, which is not a good thing, is to evaluate things objectively, empirically, to ensure that the empirical data is valid, of course, is very important, right? To have sensitivity relative to cultural differences and these type of things are very important as well. But to be able to separate, and it's discerning. We must discern between good and bad, worthy of help, and they put themselves in that situation, and now so they should take themselves out. So one is meaningless suffering through external circumstance, and one is meaningful suffering because they brought it upon themselves, and it's an educational thing to bring them out. That's the difference.
So the meaningful one that you took or you got yourself in, that is the portion where it is pathologically compassionate, right? Am I correct? I hope I'm not mixing it up.
It would be number one, you would rob. So the meaningless suffering is the one where we need to help. The meaningful
that
suffering,
we commit to help, which is that's the one you're empathetic towards, right?
100%. Yes, that's what I'm dedicating my life to. Yeah, right. So it's the meaningful suffering. It's like, yeah, they brought it upon themselves, but now also we're still compassionate because we're all the same species, right? Race, whatever. Who cares how you, the nomenclature, right? We're people. It's just, okay, you're in the situation, you brought it upon yourself. Now this is meaningful suffering, meaning that you need to go lean into the fire, like we discussed earlier with the back. Shed your dead wood, because if we rob them of that, then they will be in that
then
same.
They don't learn.
Exactly. All we do is cause meaningless suffering by catering to people who are meaningfully suffering.
Ooh, that is deep. Okay. It's coming.
What's up?
I feel like, oh, okay. I get it now. Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So let's go into citizens to warriors. Let me ask you this. I had to screenshot this from the handbook. And I said, no, I have to ask Mike this, even though I'm not so deep into this, but this is fascinating because I feel like your answer to this can apply to anything we're passionate about, anything we want to commit our lives to or dedicate our core, like a cause, right? If you have any cause, right? It could be citizens warrior, it could be reaching out to the less privileged or anything, but this was really powerful here, right? You said today we are citizens warriors, those willing, more so animated by the voluntary assumption of what may be the ultimate cost. So to shed others ill-prepared for the material threat that is to come, right? This is our purpose. It is what lights a fire in our belly, instills calmness in our mind, and lifts the heavy burden of nihilism and ego from our spirit. Now, my question is, this felt like a warning. Like what you're doing with Citizens Warrior is like a warning. And I know when I was reading it, I felt like, for me personally, I felt like, does this really apply to me as a third world citizen, right? Because you were more focused around the US, and people like that. But the place I felt that, okay, this can be, I can learn something from here is because of the blockchain, because blockchain is not about one, whether the third or first or second world, right? Anybody can plug into the blockchain. So that means there's something for us to learn there, right? So now when you say, your goal, one of your goals is to shield the ill-prepared, what is that about?
Okay, well, that can be pretty deep. So,
so make it shallow.
I'm gonna make it shallow. Okay, well, I'm gonna keep it concise and make it shallow. So let me just paint a picture then. It's not conspiratorial. I promise this is true because I actually know people in these groups. Okay. So there's, like I said, pathological mindsets, right? On compassion or this or that, right? So there's misguided people who put themselves into groups, and so it becomes an echo chamber. And then if they happen to be of means, then they're able to put themselves into, let's say, like a supranational, that above the nation, NGO, which is non-governmental or could be pseudo-governmental depending on its nature, how it's structured. So they have this idea on how the world should be and how people should lead their lives and what they're willing to sacrifice to that end. Okay, and so when we're talking about shielding, what we're saying is that. So okay, I don't know how specific you want me to get, but there are a specific set of policies that have come in from the supranational that's combined with the country in the Far East that's shifted into the European Commission, codified into law, not undemocratically, mind you, and then pushed towards Northern America and now towards what we call the global South, if you want, whatever. I don't know how you want to call it. Everyone else. Everyone else got to deal with their crap now, right? So essentially now they have ambassador programs, which puts them into positions of parliament, or depending how your government's structured, in positions of authority. And the worst part is they're brilliant people, which is the worst part of it. They're brilliant and they're very effective. And so they're starting to pressure or implement policy that in the end, they're willing to sacrifice hundreds of millions of people in the global South today. I mean, like in the coming months, right? Through starvation and the four horsemen, if you will, what comes after that, because of a hypothetical group of people that are not as privileged as them. It's like this collective guilt thing, I think, or something. I don't know. Something wrong with it. In the future. So yeah, 450 million people, sorry. They may die today. Okay, but that's acceptable because there's a billion people 50 years from now. They're going to be great. It's like, dude, you don't get the opportunity to make that call, number one. Number two, each individual is sovereign and they have a piece of the divine in them. And if you treat them like cattle, then we're going to treat you as an adversary. So come at us, bro. Like, we know who you are. We know your groups. We know your affiliates. We're already within your groups. You keep on pushing and they're going to get pushed back. And what you're saying is the warning was that is the hill that I'm personally willing to make the ultimate sacrifice on. Now, that doesn't mean to operate outside the moral schema. No, they do, which gives them an advantage. But evil will lose in the end, as long as people will die on the hill, right? The good will die on the hill. But as long as enough people charge up the hill, then they will win. So anyway, without getting into the details of it, that is what that's getting at explicitly.
To show, I mean, like you said, it is deep, but I think I have a sense of it to say there are policies, there are people in a place of power that are creating some policies that are unethical, and that is what you want to, stand against, to say you can't make decisions that would put these people in a bad place just because you have the capacity to do that. Am I in line with that, right?
Absolutely, but not in like the Marxist sense of the oppressed and the oppressor, not like that. These people have no legal standing. They have no legal standing. They were not elected democratically. They're not held accountable for their actions. They're above accountability. So if they have been brought in by a nation through a legitimate democratic process, okay, fine. Kill your people if your people want to be killed and they're voting for that. Fine, go ahead. Good luck. Right? Don't be part of the UN, please. My God, kick them out, please. But at least don't be on the Human Rights Council. But what I'm saying is, it's like, okay, that's where it came from. That's where it's going to continue to come from. And they're taking a multi-pronged approach, the public sector and the private sector. And I know people in very influential companies. I mean, I'm literally right across from Manhattan, right? Downtown, Midtown. Like, some of the leaders, like, are my boys. Like, I either grew up with them or they're older brothers of people I know, whatever. They will make policies that's against every fiber of their, and it's not even ethics. It's the most deeply ingrained morality that we have. The most fun to the human. The most you don't murder. That's one. You don't steal. That's another. Don't be driven by envy, right? These are things that are very foundational, and it's moral. It's beyond ethical. It's moral. And they are terribly immoral. And the nation state is either afraid and allowing it to happen, or it's a matter of corruption. Who knows? But blockchain is the opt-out to fallen institutions. And that's the only thing I'll bring up on blockchain, is that it gives us, if you don't have grain and you don't have the ability to barter, you're done. You're done. Okay, and it's nice also to have stability and not complete civil unrest. So then you can at least flourish as opposed to just survive. So we want everyone to flourish. And we have the ability today for that. And there's just one group in coordination with several others, sort of on the fringe, that does not want that outcome. And we can have that. Yeah. Explicitly does not want that outcome.
So I think I'm still on this matter because you talked about here, still in the handbook, you said it is our moral duty to shield the miracle of innovation so that it remains as it was originally intended.
Yes.
A decentralized, democratized mechanism designed for the betterment of the many. A means whereby we can pseudo-anonymously freely share information and value to one another without fear of recourse or predation. Thus, it is in the face of this impending threat that we must all cast aside our perceived differences and lock arms so to prepare for the flood ahead. It is in this spirit we call upon, you call upon people to join what you're doing, so that we may in short time become well-resourced, formidable, unifying force designed to effectively outmaneuver and make subservient the brutality of man, driven solely by the wheel of power that lies ahead. What is this impending threat that you talk about?
Yes,
and tying that into the idea of decentralization, the democratization.
Yeah, well, so I mean, the one problem is that with blockchain, you can't decentralize and democratize the growing of grain. That's one problem. But you can decentralize, democratize, make uncensorable the access to information and information validation. So it's in its nascent period. So when you say like, oh, I'm behind the ball, like you're actually not.
Yeah.
Like, at all, actually. I mean, there like no one is. So number one, the industry has done a terrible job in communicating any of this, although there's some good communicators who've done very, very good works. They're far and few in between. So that's on the industry. It's a nascent industry, so maybe it's to be expected. Okay. And maybe they haven't quite articulated it yet. So you're saying, how do these things tie in? Let's just find a way to be able to exchange what we believe to be true, and then have an incentive mechanism, representative consensus, checks and balance. It can even be financially driven, which is one of our VC projects, right? It's to be able to validate that by tapping into the human drives, which is social standing, achieve social standing, your social rank in the hierarchy, right? And finance, make it profitable. Making it profitable to seek out, I mean, there used to be a thing called investigative journalism. There used to be this thing called the press, which would be an essential component of any stable democracy. Without a free and open press, there is no democracy. There is simply the manipulation of the masses and divide and conquer. So what's our project outside of the foundation is a decentralized media apparatus that's token curated. We do want to use what we believe is the most sound money, Bitcoin, which is a security now. And so it's passed by the US, so that's great. And then you wrap it through utility token so it can be moved around and stuff like that, because it still has to be attractive to investors. It has to be. But the point is to make it to incentivize investigative journalism and those who think about like a predictions market, right? So you think about traders, right? Like what's going to happen in the future? What's going to happen in the future? They're driven not towards ideology. They're driven to make the most amount of money on what's the most likely outcome, right? That's what they're driven on. So the idea is we're tapping into the fundamental drivers. We're looking at mechanisms like prediction markets, right? So who's going to win an election, for example? It's not who you want. If you want to make money, you'd be like, oh, well, that guy definitely looks like he's going to do it, right? I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like I like him, but like from everything I know to be true, that's the guy. And it's immutable. Immutable means that once it's fixed into the chain, if the chain is truly decentralized and not like hosted on like one server in the US or something obscene like that, right? Which is a big problem with blockchain. A lot of blockchain is faux chain. It's BS chain. Yeah. That this is for permanence. It cannot be taken down. It cannot be censored. The people who do this can be as anonymous as they wish. right? And now, insofar as the information doesn't compromise national security, doesn't drop, like nuclear secrets on how somebody can spin up like a little thing that goes boosh and everyone's not in a good shape after that, then there's no interaction. And that would take a massive vote. And that's it. So that's it. That's it right there. It's our pursuit of truth. And in doing so, we're assuming a huge cost, because I will let you know right now, even the information found out this morning that we haven't validated, those who are pursuing truth are being taken out. Period. End of story. By taken out, I mean literally taken out. Those in the unfettered pursuit of truth are being taken out. Now, that's not a generality. It's a select few. But we heard information this morning. We have to verify it first. But if we verify it, it supports this case that we're in right now with Celsius Network, who essentially is just taking people, they're taking all people who have no money, right, from around the world, and then working middle class, and a few millionaires. Okay, it's okay. They're great. Why not? They're building to have jobs, and they employ the other guys to put the money in there. But they're just essentially robbing the people of their life's force, everything they built for, and is being allowed. And so, anyway, if we verify it, it's going to jam up the legal process. It's going to give us more time to right the wrongs that have occurred. And it will be an example of somebody who became too dangerous because he knew the truth. And this is the same truth that we've known, and we're going to go public on later today. And that's the warning that we gave. We said, come at me, bro. Number one, don't leave the States, obviously, because then easy at that point, right? Like, unless it's sanctioned by the CIA, which they don't do often for American citizens, like, why would they? Because they're looking out for us most of the time, you would hope, right? It's like, you're sort of safe unless it's a random act of violence. But when you go into like somewhere outside the States and you're an existential threat to $1 billion, let's say, oh yeah, that's easy. That's easy. I mean, I was in life science, right? I was chair and CEO of a life science company. We dealt in a lot of communist countries around the world where the governments aren't as, it's not about winning hearts and minds. That's a privilege of democracies, hearts and minds, right? And so that's how stuff goes down, and people don't understand that. And that's why you got a lot of clowns playing big boy, right? Who are playing with fire that they're going to get burned.
For me, when I was watching your videos and seeing what you're doing, I'm like, you are bold. Like, you are really, whatever it is that came on you that made you feel like, see, I'm going to take on these people. I hope that, you have your support team, people that, are with you on this. And, I just, wish you all the best in fighting. So I feel like you're a Robin Hood now, in a way, because like you're trying to, fight for people who have lost their monies in this, sort of Ponzi scheme, and then, trying to see what can people who are doing this to be brought to the book. I mean, it's not a small feat you're trying to work on, but I wish you all the best. I hope that, you're not stretched beyond your capacity to overcome this battle.
If I could just say one thing, I mean, so this is a winnable battle if the will of the people are equally willing to sacrifice in order to make this an outcome that everyone can live with, right? Or else other people are going to suffer if people are just greedy. There is just one thing I want to bring up, because this is much more pertinent than the Celsius Network, which is very niche and crypto, right? Is that we can use emergent tech for things like USAID. So right now, so you're familiar with USAID, 1% of GDP goes over in the form of financial disaster relief, foreign disaster relief rather, and economic development. So I spent a lot of my time there, and I realized that we could help so many more people, or half the tax burden, and actually engage the American people so they want to do it. And there's not this division, because there's all these movements that are happening now, because the Americans, and that's, I don't mean to speak from an American-centric standpoint, but I have to, because that's sort of my audience for the most part, although, from all over the place. But it's just like, I at the end of the day, I got to speak to them, right? So I got to walk outside and say hello. If we can put taxpayer-funded relief, if it's economic development for, let's say, the global South, this is how they're calling it, I don't know how, just non-as privileged countries, let's put it that way, right? And foreign disaster relief, which is a sham, and a lot of the charities and a lot of these like philanthropy, sham, right? If we can do this, $1 sent, $1 received, $1 sent, $1 received, and longitudinally track, what's the impact? We can fundamentally change the way with which we interact with each other, with which we show compassion to one another, with which we're engaged civically, and it mitigates risk of inter-country conflicts in a way that's never been available to mankind, ever. So it's more grandiose, but Celsius Network is just a small microcosm, right? And it has nothing to do with the real application of emerging tech. We just want that not to be a deterrent where they're coming in overregulated. So that's why we want a community solution, community reorg, community-driven reorg, so that the real stuff doesn't get tampered, because that's where we win. That's where we win.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here today, Mike. So if anybody wants to be a part of what you're doing, how can they connect with you to do that?
Well, so I mean, I guess it depends on what way you want to engage. So we have 3 different audiences, if you will, and then just sort of a 4th audience. So we have our donor network, which is on the side until we get our exemption, because the whole US thing, it takes like forever to get your exemption. That means they get a tax write-off. Anyway, it's all private too, so they can fight the good fight without fear of reprisal, which is why we're set up that way, as you know, if you watch the video, right? So you already know. Volunteers. So it's unpaid volunteers. It's a 3-month commitment. It's 19 hours a week. And you can be as public and private as you want to be, but we expect industriousness. Like, I don't care how you work at your work. We believe in the grind, and we expect to grind. If you're unpaid, I don't care. You grind. And then partnerships. So it's about leveraging human, intellectual, and financial capital so that we can get these mechanisms built, and we can work with other organizations who are structured differently than we are, who can make sure that these things are requested by, let's say, institutions or authoritative bodies, and start being piloted so we can see as the public what the effect is, which is so exciting. Yeah. Okay. So those are the major, awesome. And then generally you could just check out our site and see if you like us. And if not, tell us we suck, and we'll monetize you later if you come in mass. So that's a good part about it. I love monetizing trolls. It's
All right. Okay, so I'm going to put the link to the website in the description of this video and of the audio podcast so that you can check out what Mike and his team are doing with the Citizens Warrior movement. They've got other projects that they work on as well. So I think you're also into the blockchain in a way, so you can also help people with other things that like in the blockchain sphere. So you can check them out and see how you can be a part of what it is that they are doing, whether as a donor, as a volunteer, or as partner to be a part of that movement. So thank you so much for being here again today. Till I come your way again next time with another person sharing their stretch story. This is the Energetic EJ, and this is the Stretch Street Podcast. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Energetic EJ. Bye, everybody.